Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And two cards, one of which is a Valentine's card. So I'm including this in my Valentine series. Both of them could be any occasion. Just switch out the sentiments. So I didn't do them like pink, red, love, Valentine theme. I'm using this Friends Forever set that Simon Says Stamp released somewhat recently. Something. Cute little critters, some little punny sentiments, things like that. And yeah, I made two cards and I made them shaker cards. I did some very simple distress ink watercoloring that I think anybody can do. And the shakers themselves, also very simple. These were fun. So, as always, I will have links to all of the things that I used in the description box below the video. My links are affiliate links. That just means that if you click on one of my links and end up placing an order, I do get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you. It is what helps pay the bills, keeps my heaters going, enables me to keep bringing out content. And that's it for the housekeeping. Let's get into making the cards. So I picked two images from the Friends Forever stamp set. They're all super cute. I was only originally going to make one card, and then, as usual, I couldn't decide. So I went with this little, like, Frenchie dog with the balloons, and then these two little hamsters, guinea pigs. It kind of can be whatever you want, cuddling ones. And I am stamping them onto some distress watercolor paper. And I'm using Simon's VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. And I'm going to ink up and stamp. You can't really tell on camera, but I didn't really ink it up very well on the little puppy dog. So I'm just going to re-ink those areas and re-stamp. The joy of having a stamp positioner just makes life easier. So once these are stamped, I am going to use distress inks. And I'm just going to smush all my various inks. I'll have the colors like listed with the supplies. But for the little critters, animals, I'm using Hickory Smoke, Black Soot, Rusty Hinge, Gathered Twigs, and some Spun sugar. And just mushing the edge of the ink pads onto my little palette here. You can use any like non-porous surface. Like I've even done it in past videos where I just smush them like directly onto my glass like mat that I'm working on. But I stopped doing that because I have a really bad habit of like forgetting the inks on my work surface and then getting my elbows in it, you know? So the little plastic palette doohickey works wonderfully. And then all I'm doing is picking up those colors with my little water brush. This is my same Tim Holtz Detailer water brush that I have been using. I honestly don't even know how many years I've had this thing. It's a lot of years. If you struggle with controlling water when you're, watercoloring, I highly recommend just using like a paintbrush and a cup of water. That gives you the most control. This, I always keep a cloth off to the side to wipe between colors, but also, sometimes the brush just decides to be finicky. So, again, just very simple watercoloring. I mixed the Hickory Smoke and Black Soot for my little puppy dog, and then added a bit of the Spun sugar to his ears. And then for these little dudes, I am coloring them to look kind of like guinea pigs. Because why not? They're just cute. So I did one with the Rusty Hinge, and then the other one I did with Gathered Twigs. And yeah, like I know I say it a lot, but it's true. Like this is pretty simple, not too overwhelming. Like just looking at a stamp set like this, even myself, I was just like, oh, that's a lot of coloring. I just it's finicky. And then I stamped it out, and this took me like 15 minutes to watercolor both of these images. So yeah, if you try, just don't overthink it. As usual, do as I say, not as I do, because I overthink everything. After I was done coloring them in, my like accessory colors, I've got Tumbled Glass, Cracked Pistachio, and Victorian Velvet. I had also added Saltwater Taffy, but I didn't use that in these. I completely just didn't use it. So I used the Cracked Pistachio for one of the balloons and for like the greenery of the other image. And then I'm going in with the Tumbled Glass for this other balloon. And then finally I'm going to go in with the Victorian Velvet, which is always a color that I kind of overlook in the Distress line, and I say this almost every time I use it. I always forget what a pretty color this one is. I really love Victorian Velvet. It's just pretty. So I use that for the little florals. I'm going to use it for this final little balloon. For the flower centers, I just mixed the gathered twigs and rusty hinge together and just got that on there. And yeah, that was it. This, like I said, this is simple. Very, very simple watercoloring. So I let it dry. And once everything was dry, which didn't take very long because I didn't use a ton of water, and because I have heaters going in here all the time, things dry really quickly. So I went back in here and there, like did a second layer just on a few of the little like florals and that sort of a thing, and then let everything dry. I used the coordinating wafer dies to die cut these. So I got those lined up, and then I'll run those through my die cut machine and die cut both of these images. And then for my backgrounds, I pulled out a sort of oldie but goodie favorite. This doesn't, this came out last year at some point. I forget exactly when, but it came out a while ago, and I've used it in multiple videos. It's the Crochet Blocks stencil. I love this stencil. I just love the pattern. So I got my grip mat, and this first one is a piece of Simon's Sea Glass cardstock that's A2 size, so 4¼ by 5½ inches. And I'm using Seafoam Positively Saturated ink and just a blending brush, and just running this over the stencil. Super simple. And I think another reason why I love the stencil so much is the pattern itself is really delicate, but the stencil's not delicate. Because sometimes, just depending on the pattern, the stencil can be really delicate. You got to be more careful with it, which is fine. But I like that with this one, I can get right in there and I just don't have to worry about it. So blended the ink over this stencil just to give it a nice little pattern. You could use a paste for this too. That would look really cute. And then I put the stencil back because there was a spot that I just didn't think had enough ink. So lined the stencil back up real quick, added a bit more ink, and then I wiped off the stencil. And then the next panel, I chose mint cardstock. And for this, I'm using Spring Positively Saturated ink and doing the exact same thing. So blending brush, and then just applying the ink over the stencil. And then once I've got both of these backgrounds stenciled, I am going to, I decided to trim them down, because these were originally A2 size. These are going to completely cover the entire card front. And then this is when I decided, I was like, ooh, but what if I made these a shaker? And I'm like, So I could have still done it like full sized, but it's easier to line up, which you'll see when I like get to putting these right onto the card bases. So I decided to trim these down a little bit. I just took like 1/8 of an inch off each side so that these panels are now like 4 by 5¼ inches. So knocked that down with my guillotine trimmer. And aren't those like little guinea pigs? Like, seriously. Even if you didn't make these shakers, they'd be super cute. Like, you can't go wrong with cute little critters in my books. So, trim these down. And then to make them into shakers, or to create a window, because again, you could skip making them a shaker. You could just die cut the window and add the little images and call it a day. But I'm using one of the domed arch wafer dies and line that up. And then I'll run that through my die cut machine. I'll do the same thing to the background. And then I'll come back to these in a bit, because I needed to do my sentiments, and I also need to do the insides of the cards before I start like assembling everything. So for the insides of my cards, my card bases are top folding A2 white note cards, 4¼ by 5½ inches. I'm just stamping those same images onto the inside of each card with the corresponding ink. So this one I'm using the Spring ink. So I stamped them with that. And then I took one of the sentiments from the set and I stamped that with the Nocturne ink. So that finishes off the inside of that card. And then the other one, I'll use the little critters. This is the one that's going to be the little Valentine's card. So like I said in the intro, you could totally make these any occasion cards. Just change the sentiments. So I stamped these guys with the Seafoam ink, and then I'm going to stamp the Happy Valentine's Day sentiment. And all these sentiments are from that Friends Forever set. So line that up, and then I'll stamp that with the Nocturne ink. So then I can set those aside, let that Nocturne ink dry, because it does take a little bit longer to dry. So I set those aside, and then I've just got scraps of the same cardstocks I used for the card fronts, and I'm stamping a couple more sentiments from the set. I'd used my anti-static powder tool in the cardstock, inked up the stamp and stamped it with clear embossing ink, and then coated it with detail white embossing powder, melted that with my heat tool. And then those sentiments I die cut with the coordinating wafer dies, because the coordinating die set die cuts all the critters as well as all the like companion images and sentiments and whatnot. So set those aside because I'll add those at the end. So to make these a shaker, I need to put some acetate on the back of this to contain everything. So I just grabbed a pack of my lightweight acetate sheets, and I'm going to just trim these down to smaller than the cardstock panels. So I was just kind of eyeballing it for the most part. But as long as it's smaller, it just makes it easier to adhere these and not have any of the little bits of the acetate hanging out. So once these are trimmed down, to adhere them to the back of the cardstock panels, I like to use just a good strong adhesive. I do not like using liquid adhesive. I've talked about this in anytime I work with stuff like acetate. If I can avoid using liquid adhesive, I will. I'll use it when I have to. You know, if it's something really delicate and, you know, that it would take forever to apply an adhesive like this. But for stuff like this, I prefer something like this. This is Simon's Terrific tape, red line tape, score tape, etc. Those are my go-tos because they're strong. These are what I call dry adhesives, and they hold it, and I don't have any glue oozing out, because that's another reason why I don't like using liquid adhesives with acetate or like the packaging, etc. Because it just gets everywhere. And also I'm impatient. It takes a lot longer to dry, and it doesn't hold as good. So I use it on occasion when the card design calls for it, but I'll also go out of my way to avoid it. So I've got the acetate adhered to the back. And then to make the wells for the shakers, adding just foam strips. This is the new Altenew foam tape. This is the 1/8 of an inch thick foam tape, so the thicker foam tape. And this stuff's perfect. If you like dimension, this stuff's perfect. If you like to make shaker cards, this stuff's perfect because you don't have to like double up foam tape. I find one layer of this is more than enough. So I just applied the foam tape around the perimeter of the back of these panels, making sure everything butts up against it so nothing can like fall out. And then to make these into shakers, you could either fill them, you know, face up like this. I've shown that in a million videos. And then, you know, adhere something to the back of it. But I want to adhere these directly to my card fronts. So I've removed the backing from the foam tape. I've got my card base here. I've taped it down just so it stays. And then I'm putting my shaker bits right in the center of the card base. And for my shaker bits, I'm mixing Simon's Starshine embellishment mix, which is the more sort of clear, you know, not iridescent. And then the Northern Lights embellishment mix, just to give it a little extra something. And then all I got to do is press that shaker window over top, and there it is. It's a shaker. It's simple. So repeat the process on the second one. Taped the card into place. More so I didn't accidentally knock it over once I dump all these like bits of confetti on it, because you know that would have happened if I hadn't taped it down. And then get the confetti into place and then flip this over and adhere it, and that's it. Simple shaker card. Like, yeah. Could have added, you know, pattern paper to the back, or we could have stenciled on the back, like on the card front itself as well. But I decided to just leave it white. Again, I was going for simple. So my little characters, I adhered with just some thin foam squares. And then the sentiments, after I had die cut them with the coordinating wafer, I die cut another layer from those scraps just to give the sentiment just a little extra. Didn't feel the need to like pop it up, but it'll just give it that little extra something. And so I adhered those layers together with just my craft tacky glue, and then figured out where I wanted to place the sentiment on, or the sentiments on these cards. And I'd done them with the same color cardstock, just as sort of a different look. Normally it's habit to do like black cardstock with white heat embossing. But yeah, I kind of like the look with the same color cardstock. It just makes it slightly more subtle. So after I adhered those into place, I decided to add a few more of the little Starshine confetti to these, just to give it that little extra something. So I placed a few of them around the little critters on these card fronts, and then just picked them up with my embellishment wand and adhered them into place with dabs of craft tacky glue. And then as my final little like embellishment to these, and yes, I'm aware I did not add splatter. I thought about it, but I skipped it. Trust me, I'll make up for it. I always do. The next video will most likely, either the next one or one coming up will have like 5 types of splatter or something insane. Anyway, I just used a white gel pen and just added a few little dots and highlights to the finished images, and that was it. Again, these were simple. This is, I think, something like anyone can do, and they're cute. Very simple watercoloring, a very easy shaker. And yeah, the stenciling, the pattern, I really like this. I love this crochet blocks stencil. I was looking for something else and came across it again, and I was like, oh yeah. So that was it. And they make noise, you know, which is always fun. I don't know why. I really like shaker cards, and just, this is my type of interactive card, just simple. So, like I mentioned in the intro, I'll have links to all the things in the description box below the video. And then I'll link to like my flat shaker playlist. I'll link to that at the end. That's just another way to make shaker cards, and I've shown it in many different ways, so you can check those out too if you are interested. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me, for thumbs upping and commenting, and I'll see you all very soon in the next one. Bye! Thank you so much to my amazing Patreon supporters. For anyone that might be interested in joining my Patreon community and supporting me, the link to my Patreon is in the description box below the video. For everyone else, as always, thank you all so much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping, commenting, subscribe if you haven't, I'd love to have you. And here's a couple other videos for you to check out in case you missed them. Bye!